What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fantasy Feud podcast. I am Stoned Arrow, the host of said podcast. And before we get into things today, I want to shout out our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. As usual, we are the Fantasy Feud. We are also on Spotify if you're listening on YouTube, and vice versa. Before I send it over to my colleague Mason, I want to talk about how I told everyone to draft Xavier Jones in some leagues. Sorry about that. He got cut today in breaking news. So don't draft him after the Sony Michel trade happened. I think that was kind of obvious to not target him anymore. But I'll send it over to Mason to talk about a little bit of the breaking news that's happened here today.
All right, I'm just going to go over some stuff very quickly. Like Stone just said, Xavier Jones got cut. Hurts my heart a little bit. John Brown got let go by the Raiders today. Let's see here. Jordan Howard, Paul's guy that he made a guarantee, got cut. I'm just kidding.
I never made a guarantee. I just threw him out there.
Evan Ingram's hurt right now. Chris Herndon, former New York Jets tight end, just got traded to the Minnesota Vikings because Irv Smith is dealing with a meniscus injury. That stuff can be slightly tricky. He can miss half a season. He can miss a full season. It just kind of all depends on the severity of the tear. Let's see here. Michael Bagley, or Badgley, I don't know how to say his name, kicker for the Chargers, lost his job. Michael Thomas is headed to the PUP list, so he's going to miss 5 to 6 games. Let's see here. Oh, the biggest one that I forgot to mention so far. Cam Newton gets cut by the Patriots, and we're going to talk about that a little later. So that means Mac Jones wins the starting job. All right, I think that's about enough to talk about with that.
Yep, right before I send it over to Paul, I do want to say we're Bears fans over here. The Bears also put Tariq Cohen on the PUP list, so Damian Williams is going to be the number 2 running back for quite a while to start the year. Paul, you want to go ahead and kick off the AFC East for us?
Yeah, the AFC East consists of Cam Newton's New England Patriots. Wait a minute. I mean, Mac Jones' New England Patriots, like Mason just alluded to. New head coach Robert Saleh and his rookie quarterback look to lead the woeful New York Jets back to football relevance. While seemingly a newly wide-open division after TB12's departure, Buffalo's Josh Allen looks poised to fend off Brian Flores' surprising 2020 Miami Dolphins to keep the Bills Mafia atop the AFC East for years to come, following that hefty contract extension. 6 years, $258 million. Crazy. But for this episode, we're going to be sticking to the rival Buffalo Bills and New England Patriots.
The Dolphins, if you look at their roster, it is not scary. So whatever you just said about them, whatever.
I said the 2020 surprising Dolphins.
Oh, I thought
they beat expectations last year with their first-year head coach. So
for them to surprise again,
we'll say that I didn't call them scary by any means.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, let's go. All right, so I'll just start it off with the Bills today, guys. Let's talk about their offense. Are they going to be stopped this year? No clue. Last year they put up top numbers for fantasy points at the quarterback position and wide receiver position. That is not questionable, being that they had Josh Allen, the top scoring fantasy QB, and Stephon Diggs. But when it comes to running back and tight end, they finished nearly last in fantasy numbers. Is Sean McDermott's offense, which it's really Brian Dabble, I don't know. He's actually the offensive coordinator. Really as special as everyone thinks. Can this offense actually be stopped now? Maybe if they look to, I don't know if they can stop his arm, but if we're looking at the running backs, Singletary rushed in 2 TDs, Moss ran in 4 touchdowns, and Allen ran in 8. Now they bring in the backfield Matt Breida to make this even more confusing. And then I guess one more thing when we're talking about this offense, Cole Beasley. He remains a solid flex option as one of the best slot wide receivers in the league. So I'm going to let whoever kick off this potential bust talk.
All right, so kind of the way Mason just alluded, running backs, Devin Singletary is he's my bust. Is he the starter? Zach Moss the starter? Nobody knows. with an average draft position of the 10th round, 10th pick. I don't think he's really worth taking a chance on because, like Mason just said, they even added Matt Breida to the backfield. Now it gets even more messy. But after a 12-game rookie season, he showed some promise, producing 775 yards and 2 touchdowns on 151 attempts. He had another 200 through the air on 30 receptions. Then came 2020. That was a bad year for almost everybody, but it was pretty terrible for him. Playing a full 16-game season where he had 5 extra carries for a total of 156 in 4 extra games, he produced less yards, 687. His yards per carry dropped from 5.1 to 4.4. I know we talked about it in a previous episode where I said if your yards per carry is above 4, it's average, and if it's below, I know you kind of called me out on it with Christian McCaffrey Stone, but I mean, regardless of his being 4.4, it's still not that good. Yes, he had to contend with rookie running back Zach Moss last year. He kind of has an ADP of the 8th pick in the 8th round. But again, like I said, I wouldn't touch either one of them at this point. And he only played 13 games and had 112 carries. The opportunities were there, especially having 3 games more as a lead back to himself without having Zach Moss there to take any of the touches. He progressed more, in my opinion, than most fantasy owners would want. Like we kind of alluded to in one of our last episodes where we talk about backfield of Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs. Kenyon Drake showed the ability to be able to share a backfield. Devin Singletary, not so much. 2021 doesn't seem to fare much better for him. As the head coach has already come out and said, whoever has the hot hand, they're going to ride him. Again, like Mason just brought up, they brought in another running back. It's just going to crowd that backfield up even more.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and build off of that because I'm kind of on the same wavelength. Just like I said, they had a combined 6 rushing touchdowns between Moss and Singletary. They're both my bust. Basically all the points Paul made, same as mine, very valid. They finished 29th in fantasy points for running backs last year. I don't see them really taking a step forward unless they make Josh Allen take a step back when it comes to rushing the football. Like he is a hard-nosed dude. He's gonna run the ball. He's gonna jam those touchdowns in. If he keeps 8, if he's around that, I'm sure he'll regress. That's a high number of rushing touchdowns. But if he still has 6 or so, that's still taking away way too many touchdowns from that running backfield. But if that backs down to maybe 2, maybe we'll see a clear running back jump out of the woodworks this year. Not really sure, but that's my take on that.
I think the best running back on the team's, I think it's fairly clear, and you guys really aren't touching upon it. It's Josh Allen. I mean, let's be real. By far, the most efficient running and probably the fastest, probably the most powerful. He gets the most touchdowns.
The fastest. You know who I do love? I do like Matt Breida. And then we go back to durability. That's a huge thing for him. Yeah. But if he's given the chance to kind of take the lead, I'm sure he'll be fine in games. He might be a flex option. Not really sure.
So, yeah, for my bust, though, steering away from the running backs because I thought it was pretty cliche because, I mean, clearly that's just all kinds of question marks. I wanted to go with one of the receivers on the team, which seems kind of crazy because that pass offense is literally insane, but I'm going to say Emmanuel Sanders here. He's 34, and he's clearly on the back end of his career. And last year was his actual best single season since 2016 with New Orleans. He had 726 yards and 5 touchdowns. But don't forget how bad New Orleans receivers were decimated last year at the position. So, obviously he was one of the only options to get targets there. Now he's moving to Buffalo, and they have Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, who is extremely underrated, like Mason said earlier, and Gabriel Davis, who I expect to take a decent-sized role in the offense because he showed a lot of promise last year. There isn't much to like about Sanders here, considering his targets are sure to decline from 82 last year. So you're better off taking someone like Cole Beasley here instead of Emmanuel Sanders as the number 2 receiver.
Let's transition from that to my guarantee. Okay. He finished as wide receiver number 26 in 2020 with a 20% target share, 82 catches, 967 yards, 4 touchdowns. Not very crazy, not like exciting, but whatever. That was his stat line of 2021. His average draft position is in the 13th round right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you your fantasy flex steal of the year, Cole Beasley. Okay. I think the guy's rock solid. But there's 2 downfalls. One, his public stance on COVID is getting him in trouble a little bit. So look for there to be problems when it comes to him not getting the vaccine and having to sit out for games and breaking protocol, yada, yada, yada. And then the second point, his 7 finishes last year below 9 points. That kind of bothers me a little bit. But he showed the ability to put up 20-plus points in multiple games. As far as Gabriel Davis goes, like Stone mentioned, I do like that guy, and I do think he's going to take a step forward in this offense, but I only think that's really going to take away targets from Stephon. I think that's going to bring Stephon down just a little bit. I think Cole Beasley will stay right around the same. Hopefully his touchdowns increase. He'll be a solid flex option all year long if that's the case.
I'm interested that you think that it's going to take away from Diggs as opposed to Beasley with the year that Diggs had last year.
Yeah, I just think Gabriel Davis is going to kind of come on as that number 2 wide receiver. I just think it's going to take away from Diggs. Cole Beasley is going to be running in the slot still.
I mean,
so
my guarantee is Stephon Diggs. As if there should be any question about his, guarantee on this offense. Obviously, he's a stud. Last year, he produced incredible numbers and shot himself straight into the top 5 receivers in the NFL conversation. I don't think there's any question about that. 1,535 yards and 8 touchdowns on 127 catches with 166 targets. That's surefire top 3 fantasy numbers right there, and I wouldn't be scared of him not doing it again. Yeah, there's nothing to be scared of. Diggs is the man.
And just to kind of add to that a little bit, I feel like we've seen, that next step in Diggs' career, where he went from being that deep threat downfield receiver in Minnesota, kind of being able to. I wouldn't put him in the same categories like a Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas, where he's a reception beast. But we did see his receptions go up, increasingly from the past 2 seasons. His last one in Minnesota, to where he became the number 1 target in Buffalo with Josh Allen. And Josh Allen is my guarantee. Feel like this is a pretty simple one. Started 44 out of 48 possible games in his 3-year career. The 4 games that he missed were all in his rookie season, so back-to-back 16-game seasons for him. Even with him being considered a running quarterback, size and goal line touches, 211 rushes, and 17 touchdowns in the last 2 years. That's incredible. And that just goes to speak to the volumes like we talked about with their backfield. It's not very good. Those 17 touchdowns, obviously 8 of them came last year. So that means 9 of them the year before. And I don't see that really regressing much. I think he's still going to be one of the goal line backs just because he has that ability. Not to say he's going to be out here rushing for 20-yard touchdowns, but he's going to take away a lot of the goal line attempts in the red zone for me. His passing attempts have increased from 320, 461, all the way up to 572 so far in his career. And the same trajectory fits his completion percentage from year 1 to year 3. It went from 52% all the way up to 69%. And then he had a career year in yards last year, 4,544 with 37 touchdowns. I don't see, I guess, barring any injuries to Stephon Diggs or himself, I don't really see a lot of regression happening. I think he's going to kind of plateau right around that 4,200 to 4,500 yard mark. Whether he could throw 37 touchdowns again, that might be a little much, but his rushing touchdowns are going to pick it up. So I really don't think there's any bad reason, I guess, to draft him. As of right now, I think his ADP is like the end of the 3rd round. That might be the only concern for me, because as we've talked about, when we're drafting, you want to be able to get 2 running backs per, I guess not the Stone, but you want to try to get at least 2 good running backs in the first 3 rounds. And so if you're doing that, it kind of leaves out the possibility of grabbing 2 really good receivers, or just kind of mixing it up to where you do draft Josh Allen. If you can get him a little later, that's perfect. But I feel like trying to get him at the end of the 4th or the beginning of the 4th might be a little early.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of incredible, like you talked about earlier, his completion percentage and how much it's changed from when he was a rookie to last year. People thought that this guy was a complete bust, just like Josh Rosen, because of how inaccurate he was. It's actually insane how he turned things around there. And I will say, Mason asked the question, can there be a way for this offense to fall apart at the beginning? And I was like, well, the only thing that could cause that really is Josh Allen dropping his completion percentage again. Because if it goes down, that takes away from Diggs' production. And obviously your running back production isn't there really. And then the tight end production isn't there. So it just hurts the whole team if he doesn't play well this year.
Defenses are coming for this team. Like, they are going to look to stop Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, and if they can do that, which it's going to be very hard to stop an arm like that, and just the specimen he is. But that's why I'm just like, oh, is there regression? Are we going to see regression from Allen? Are we going to see regression from Diggs? Still think they're going to be the top team in the division. Just don't know.
I mean, I have Stephon Diggs paired with Josh Allen in a league. I'm not scared of them, obviously. They're both fantastic players. I don't think there is anything to be scared
draft picks.
Yeah. Mason, you want
I got a question for you guys. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I got a question, though. As we're kind of talking about Josh Allen and it being young rookie quarterbacks, or not rookie, but young quarterbacks kind of taking the league by storm, would you guys rather have Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson?
Josh Allen.
Yeah, Josh Allen.
Personally. He's just a better passer than Lamar Jackson is. But obviously Lamar Jackson's better on the ground.
You need like that perfect offense for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and the Ravens have the perfect offense for him, so he fits his system perfectly. I think Josh Allen's kind of a guy that you could have on many different teams, but he fits well with a very pass-happy offense. What about yourself, Paul?
The only reason I asked and compared those two, mine would be Josh Allen as well.
Okay.
The only reason I asked like those two comparably is because at the beginning of Josh Allen's career, like I said, he was considered more of a running quarterback.
Yep.
But being able to go from 52% all the way up to almost 70% completion percentage and having the big arm that he does, like I said, I was just kind of curious because I know a lot of people like having the Kyler Murray or the Lamar Jackson to where you're going to get all the rushing yards and the touchdowns. But Josh Allen's kind of a mix of everything. He'll bring you 4,000 yards like he already did, 37 touchdowns, but he'll also get you almost close to double-digit rushing touchdowns. It was just kind of a thought, just a question for you guys.
I think Josh Allen's more likely to repeat the season he had last year as opposed to what Lamar Jackson did, I think it was 2 years ago now, when he was just absolutely incredible fantasy-wise.
That's a good point.
I think he had like 1,100 yards rushing, but yeah, sorry, go ahead. We'll continue.
Yeah, we'll go on to the New England Patriots here. Mason, you want to take over?
All right, let's talk about these guys. So, another team in shambles. They spent $268 million in free agency in 2021. After finishing 7-9, Bill appeared to panic a little bit. Maybe not just Bill himself, but after finishing 32nd in fantasy points at both wide receiver and tight end, the Patriots landed Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, and Nelson Aguilar. Will that be enough to turn around that passing game in New England with new starter Mac Jones? Who knows? They finished 9th in total fantasy points at running back last year, but we all know how that New England backfield goes. It's always a headache. As far as new guys come in, though, Ramondre Stevenson looks pretty good in the preseason. James White had his worst fantasy season, finishing 42nd in 2020 after Brady left. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into our busts after that being said.
Yeah, I want to talk about the running back situation a little bit. I'm going with Damian Harris here for being a bust for the Patriots. He showed good promise in 10 games last year with 700 yards and a 5 yards per carry average. So, he looked pretty solid. But I'm weary of him holding on to his job. You got James White. He's there. He's always going to get the touches within the offense. He's remained a steady receiving option for the Patriots for 7 years now. But White isn't who I'm talking about. You ready for this, guys? I'm talking about preseason standout Ramondre Stevenson, baby. Not going to say he looks like my favorite running back, Alvin Kamara, but he showed this preseason that he has the big play potential like Kamara showed in the preseason in 2017. He was ripping off big touchdowns for New England, and he also displayed the ability to catch the ball from the backfield. He's worth a late round grab and could potentially perform way higher than expected. I looked back on some Alvin Kamara preseason highlights, and he was playing with first-team offense, and Ramondre Stevenson has been playing with second-team, third-team for the most part, so it's not completely comparable, and Alvin Kamara was just Alvin Kamara. He was absolutely insane, and I don't see him being anything like Kamara, but I can see the flashes in the preseason like Kamara gave us in the past in Stevenson.
I love that. That guy looks awesome. I'll just go ahead and finish that off with my bust is Damian Harris again. As of right now, I think he still looks to be atop of the depth chart. His ADP is 7.09, which isn't terrible for landing a potential starting running back in fantasy football. He had a larger workload last year with 691 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, but no work in the passing game. Cam Newton did steal his goal line carries, so this might change things up with Mac Jones. There might be more potential for Damian Harris now. Just overall, maybe he does come up as a pass catcher. I don't know. But like Stone said, Ramondre Stevenson is showing out in preseason, and I have more to talk about after Paul goes ahead and gives me his bust.
My bust is somebody who was kind of looked at as the next heir to the throne for starting tight ends in San Diego at the time, Sir Henry. He came over in free agency this year. Looking at an ADP at the back end of the 11th, where do I begin? Starters, he's yet to play a complete 16-game season in his 5 years. He missed the entire 2018 season with a torn ACL suffered in training camp. Never had more than 60 catches in a single season, which isn't good for somebody who, I said, was supposed to take over as an elite tight end in San Diego. Jason, help me out. Who's the old tight end?
Gates, bro. Come on.
Antonio Gates. The name was it was on the tip of my tongue, but it wasn't there.
I do that too. I'm just
to take over for Antonio Gates, he never showed the potential. Or I guess he always kind of showed flashes of the potential. It just never showed up. For being the first tight end out of his draft class, coming out of Arkansas, just like I said, it just wasn't there. The results were never there for him. And the cherry on top for me is the fact that he's never had more than 650 receiving yards in a season. To me, that's kind of barely average for a starting tight end, especially for somebody who spent most of his career alongside a guy like Keenan Allen, where he's made his money having 100 reception seasons and going over 1,000 yards every year. So the targets are there because they never had a lot of other people around the quarterback, Phillip Rivers or Justin Herbert, besides Keenan Allen, really. I mean, you had Travis Benjamin, Antonio Gates, he got old, obviously, and I mean,
he was built.
Yeah, he was still effective, but he was built different. But you had guys like Travis Benjamin, you had guys like Tyrell Williams, the guys that Chicago even traded for that was complete bust. But again, there was so much potential for Hunter Henry to kind of show out as one of the next elite tight ends in the league, and he just never did it. I don't think his 11-round ADP really fits. And going into New England, I know they kind of like to run a 2 tight end system. Jonnu Smith, he also came in. He kind of brings a little injury history himself. To me, it's all red flags for Hunter Henry. I would steer completely clear of him.
I, for the most part, agree with that. I think Jonnu Smith's going to be the tight end that gets more production of the two, to be honest with you. But, I mean, I do like the change of scenery for Hunter Henry. Maybe it's a good thing for him. Who knows? We're going to move on to our guarantees now, and I just want to say, like I said in my bust, I'm a big fan of Ramondre Stevenson. In the preseason, he totaled 30 carries for 216 yards on a 7.2 yard per carry average and 5 rushing touchdowns. And then just to add on top of that, he had 3 catches for 25 yards. That's in 3 games. These stats aren't something to sleep on, guys. I think taking him as a very late round flyer, he could possibly be a league winner this year.
You missed one thing about him. The kid's built different. He's 6 foot, 230 pounds. He shows great attributes of speed, agility, and power. The dude's big and he can move. Okay, like Stone said, well, he has limited showcase in the NFL, but it's just kind of one of those things where you watch him and you're just like, that kid's got it. When you sit there, you can just tell sometimes, and that's how I feel about Ramondre Stevenson. Nothing crazy as far as depth chart right now. It's just more of an intuition type thing. That's what I'm going with as well, Ramondre Stevenson, baby.
They've already said that he's essentially the number 2 behind Harris. So
Yeah,
if he's already the number 2, if he's already above James White on the depth chart, I mean, that's looking really good for the guy because James White's their security blanket guy.
He's gonna stay that change of pace guy. I mean, that's kind of expected in my opinion.
And I just want to say, when I was comparing him to Alvin Kamara, I'm not saying he plays like Kamara. He's not the same guy as Kamara. I just want to say the last person that I saw in the preseason that caught my eye like this was Alvin Kamara.
Sounds being extra careful after all that Xavier Jones stuff.
Yeah, I just want to make sure you guys don't think I'm dumb. All right.
All right, Paul. Who's your guarantee?
Just to tack onto that a little bit, and to give a little bit better of a comparison in my eyes for Ramondre Stevenson. Granted, he has a couple inches on him. Maurice Jones-Drew.
Okay.
He was an absolute stud in Jacksonville. Absolute tank. Like I said, I think he was listed at about 5'8", 5'9", something around there.
But he's actually,
but again, he was one of those bigger backs, 230. It's very possible. Quit dogging on MJD. Come on now. You know he was a stud.
I love him.
Yeah, so getting into my pick, Jacoby Myers, I think entering his 3rd season, he's already going to be penciled in as one of the top starting receivers. He kind of showed some decent chemistry with Cam Newton last year. Obviously, he kind of has to bring that back and kind of start to learn it with Mac Jones. But doubled up his stats from 2019 to 2020. He had 59 receptions on 80 targets for 729 yards, although he had 0 touchdowns. I 100% think that that's going to change because, like I said, I see him as probably their number 1 receiver right now. No, y'all might be questioning why he's my guarantee if he's never scored a touchdown or with minimal stats to back it up. What's that?
I said I am the guy that just said Ramondre Stevenson.
Well, it's to me, it's the uncertainty of the receiving core for Cam Newton anymore, but Mac Jones. And they brought in 2 tight ends in free agency. We already discussed them, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. I don't see either one. Well, maybe Jonnu, like Stone said, but I don't see much happening with Hunter Henry. As well as free agent wide receiver Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar. So, I mean, they've brought in players to kind of pick up those targets that were left out there. And now that you have a more traditional quarterback in Mac Jones starting and kind of taking over the locker room, I feel like the sky's kind of just the limit. To me, he has the most promise. But, I mean, having already established some chemistry in that offense under Josh McDaniels, to me, he just seems like the logical choice at wide receiver to see an uptick in his production.
He had 80 targets last year with Cam Newton at the helm, and Cam Newton wasn't really throwing the ball much last year. I think Mac Jones.
Cam Newton's just not that accurate.
Well, that's true too. I think Mac Jones is going to throw the ball more than what Cam Newton did last year. I think Jacoby Myers is a very safe pick for this, honestly, because who's the next guy after that? Like N'Keal Harry? I think he's still there somehow.
No, Nelson Aguilar.
Well,
there's
come on, Nelly Sweat. He's going to drop everything that's thrown to him. Come on now, he's going to have like 30 targets and end up with 2 catches.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's gonna. Honestly, I could see Jacoby Myers outproducing Nelson, but I think Nelson kind of proved himself last year with the Vegas Raiders. He kind of came in. And Paul, I just want to mention You're dogging Henry and Jonnu Smith, but they're the second coming of Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. So you better just calm down, bro.
All right, Mason, goodbye.
Are they?
Mason, you can
Yeah, are they?
Bye, guys.
shut your camera off. You're
Which
out of
one's
here.
going to prison? Which one's going to prison?
Easy.
But with all this, we're gonna go ahead and say goodbye to you guys because that's gonna be all we have time for today. Before we get out of here, I want to shout out our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're the Fantasy View on there, on YouTube and Spotify with the same name. Mason, you got anything to say before we leave?
Fantasy View out, baby.
What about yourself, Paul?
Just keep coming back. If you happen to listen to our podcast, give us a like, subscribe, and we're just going to keep pumping out this content for you guys.
Yep, and make sure to comment down below if you have any questions to ask us. We are more than happy to reply to you guys. But like Mason says, Fantasy View out, baby.